We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And if you're looking at YouTube, there's actually something over on the other half of the screen instead of just an AVRant logo. Tom is back, which means he has
my computer
news.
back.
Yes, that's right.
So after all that complaining and everything about, I got files and stuff I want to get off this computer and everything. They called me Friday, I think. And
you texted it something. Yeah, it was late in the week anyway last week.
Yeah, and they said that the computer was done, and it was a solder had failed, a joint or whatever connection.
Okay. Yeah.
They replaced the cable going between the motherboard and the monitor, or the screen, I should say, because it is a laptop.
It's a laptop. Yeah.
And that didn't make any difference, so they put the old cable back on and they redid the solder connections, and that's what fixed it. So it really wasn't that much money, which was great.
That's good.
And then all of the complaining about me saying, "Hey, I need to get some files off of here, and it's really important." I've done none of that.
Well, because it's functioning. It would have been more of a priority if it was like, okay, this thing is like barely functional, could fail at any second, then you'd be hurrying to get the files off. But
I know, I should definitely do it, but
backing up is a generally good idea.
I do have backups, though. That's the thing. It's just a couple of... It's just like the AVRant files. Like everything else in my life that's important is on Dropbox, essentially. So we're backed up to Dropbox, and it's on multiple computers. So I could just grab it there, and then when this computer goes back online, whatever. So yes, I got my computer back. That's exciting for me. And then my wife left, so she went. Not
the marriage,
worse.
Not the marriage, just the location.
Just the location. She went to a conference, and now I'm having to deal with everything in the house. Which
yes.
I think I've said this before. Every time she's left, which has not been that often, but all the people out there who are single parents. How?
I know, right?
You do it.
There's like the single parents who work more than one job as well, and it's just like,
like my mom was never there for me, and my dad left when I was 5. I'm like, your mom was. I'm not saying that more parenting couldn't have been done or whatever, but holy moly, this is not easy, and I'm doing it for like 3 days, and I'm like mad at the dog for not peeing fast enough. I'm like, I got things to do. I got to get places, and you're slowing me down.
I was like that Simpsons episode where Marge took a one-person vacation for just 1 week, and it came back, and Homer's like, never leave again, never leave again.
No, it's so hard. It's so stupidily hard. To do anything just by yourself. So yes, we are. And it's finals. My son, we don't call them finals here, but that's the last couple of weeks of school, and he's got lots of tests. So I've got to keep on him about studying and making sure he's on school in time. Not that I wouldn't have done that anyways.
This is your youngest son who's still in high school, or
he is, and still in high school. Yes.
Gotcha.
My eldest son, I think, is finishing his finals this week. His college. My middle son goes to FSU, and if you remember a couple weeks back, there was a shooting incident there, and he was not involved in any way or affected by that, other than being locked down for 3 hours.
Oh, just other than that.
Other than that, yes.
Good grief,
being locked down in his
the goalposts.
God. Listen, I'm not saying we don't live in a dystopian hellscape here in the United States, but little bit sometimes kind of creeps in from the corners.
I mean, when I saw that convention for companies that sell various products to try and reduce the harm during school shootings, I'm like, a convention for those companies. I see. Meaning enough business is being
done. There's no
done.
Financial incentive to stop these from happening when we can make money off of them. I mean, that's capitalism, baby.
So a little strange.
Well, because of that, his all of his final tests became optional. Nothing nothing at that school from that point forward could be used against you for your grade. So
against you.
So it could not bring your grade down. It can only bring your grade up.
Okay. All right.
I guess hey, I'm just reporting on the news.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't make it.
Nope.
Right? I didn't make this happen. So, so he took the test he needed to take, and then that he thought could help his grades, and the ones that he didn't care, or then his grades were good enough, he was like, he just pieced out of those.
Yeah.
So he came home
not
a little
attempting
bit early.
to raise the grade.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be raised anymore. It's usually an A or it's usually an A with him.
Yeah, if it's already
so
an A,
he didn't. It's already an A. He doesn't need to raise it anymore.
Okay.
So he and three of his friends got in a car and left, and they are driving around the United States to go. I don't know what they're doing. He's supposed to be keeping us in the loop, and he absolutely is not. My wife is not here, and she is the one that has the iPhone, and he has an iPhone, so she's tracking his location to figure out where he is.
Oh, I see.
You know, where he's sleeping and stuff like that. Which is, we're not intrusive about it, but every once in a while we just are like, oh, he's in this city. And we're like, and this is when he's at college. And we're like, oh, he's 3 hours away from his dorm room. That's weird. We don't say anything to him about it, but we know about it. We wait for him to bring it up, and he does usually bring it up eventually.
Okay.
But so we're tracking his location to figure out where he is and stuff. And I have family all over the place, and his friends also have family that live, throughout the United States. So I think they're semi-couch surfing. I think they might be sleeping in that car. I don't know where they're sleeping because he was supposed to bring a tent and a sleeping bag, and I don't think he did. So I don't know what they're doing. So I did get a video of him sledding down sand dunes.
Sure. In
New Mexico someplace.
Yep.
And I got a picture from Carlsbad Caverns, which if you know anything about the southwestern United States, Carlsbad Caverns is a notable place to go to. We suggested that he did. It's a beautiful, huge cave that you can walk through, and there's tours, and every night like millions and millions of bats come out of the top of this thing, which is very, very interesting. And I haven't been there since I was younger than him. Okay. So him and his friends are doing a 2-week long United States driving trip.
Road trip.
So that's very exciting. Road trip. Yeah. And so from a father's point of view, I'm 100%. My wife was like, "Why are you staying in the United States? You should go someplace else." Oh, because she travels, and she's very comfortable traveling. And most of his friends are much better off than we are, and they've all traveled too. Okay. So, she's like, "You're young. It's easy to drive around in the United States. The things you're doing are not hard. You should go to some country where it's harder because you're young, and if you miss a little sleep or you have to walk up a huge hill with a massive backpack,
right?
You can do that. You don't have to stay at hotels. You could sleep in a really uncomfortable hostel in in some country in, I don't know, on the continent of Africa or something. But she wanted him to do that. We're completely comfortable with this whole thing. But the whole thing started off with him saying one of his friends wanted to drive out to California and hike and camp on this week-long trail where you actually have to have, and I don't know where, I can't remember what the trail was. I don't know. It's got to be on the Sierra Nevada range, and it's supposed to be a week long, but you have to plan it out, and they have to, you hike from one rest stop thingy to another, and then you have food delivered. Oh, because that's, or you have supplies, whatever.
They don't trust the pack in, pack out.
I don't know. That what I just told you is more defined than anything he ever told us. Okay. I was like, what is your plan for being out in the woods for a week? Oh, yeah, we're still talking about it. Okay. You cannot be. That's how people, they make, the one who lives gets a movie made about them. Okay.
A week is not that long. But
it's not that long, but it's long enough to die of dehydration. What I mean? It's long enough to get into a lot of trouble with wild animals.
It is enough to get in a lot of trouble. Yes, that doesn't take long at all.
So I was like, listen, we're completely supportive of you doing this. You're going to die. Like you have to come up with a better, like you are not camping for a week out in the woods without a plan. Mm-hmm. You can't wing it. I'm like, they don't have a term for it, but he had everything done for his Eagle Scout, for the scouts, an Eagle Scout, except for getting the project done. And then he got a girlfriend and lost complete interest in doing that. So he never completed it. My other two sons, the oldest one has his Eagle Scout. The youngest one has already completed his project, and he's just a little bit of paperwork away from getting it done. And that's supposed to be done in the next week or two. So, these boys should know. They know what you have to do to survive in the wilderness to a certain extent. But at the very least, you should have enough of respect of how quickly things can go south.
I mean, that's the folly of youth, isn't it? You don't until you've experienced it and come close, and hopefully you come close instead of going all the way to the part where there's no return.
So he is my son. Like my wife has two sons, and I have a son.
Oh, okay, I see.
And this Division
one is mine. Labor. Gotcha.
And let me tell you something about my son. He does not lack confidence.
Okay,
He does not lack the ability to believe that it'll be okay. Because that's fine, you know. And he gets that directly from his father, like 100%. Like I keep talking. I'm like, listen, you can't do this. He's like, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that sounds like you're still gonna do it. It sounds exactly the way I would tell my father when he said not to do something. When I was 100% gonna still do it.
Yes, yeah.
So I am not convinced he's not going to.
Right.
Until we track his location and see that he keeps moving from place to place from day to day. So my son's off traipsing. We won't see him for another.
Okay.
He left on. Well, by the time this podcast comes out, he left a week ago, basically.
Okay. All right.
So we have one more week, but 2 weeks of this podcast before I'll be able to tell you.
Of fret and worry. You can tell folks what's on Tom's mind. There's like a little therapy session, unplanned.
Yeah. So, yes, I guess that's what's going on with me. I don't think that other than my wife not being here and the school year ending and stuff like that. It's just all wine and roses over here. So what's going on with you, Rob?
Not as busy a week for me, but we do have the final results from the Canadian elections. So ended up with the Liberal Party is the governing party, but they do not have a majority. You need 172 seats in our parliament to have an outright majority, where they would not need to work with any other parties to pass legislation. But they came up 3 seats short. They came up with 169 seats. They will need 3 votes from some other party or group of other parties, which is not. I kind of like that because it means that any legislation they want to pass has to be just reasonable enough that they can get 3 other votes, and that shouldn't be super difficult for them to do. But it does mean that they can't just ramrod things right through. So in the end, a couple of ridings ended up with results, forced recounts, automatic recounts because of how thin the margins were. And 2 seats ended up changing after the Tuesday morning when all initial votes had been counted. There was I think 6 ridings that had automatic recounts, and 2 of those ended up switching by margins of 26 votes total. Is the difference. So when you talk about, maybe my vote doesn't matter, it's like when you're in those types of ridings, every vote honestly does count at that point.
And everyone who's here, if you're old enough, you remember the whole Florida Al Gore, George W. hanging Chads thing. It was easily that close here as well.
Right.
So don't be like, well, that's just Canada. Shut up. Don't be stupid.
Oh no! It's and having actual hand recounts and stuff can be really, really important. Ended up with the Conservative Party. They are the official opposition with 143 seats, which is a gain on the number of seats that they had before, but clearly not the initial poll results from the beginning of the year where they thought they were going to have a sweeping majority coming in. So that is all settled. We know for sure now what it will be for the next number of years here in Canada. So that's nice to have that done. And then, yeah, just a little update on my aunt's tax situation that I mentioned last week. Thankfully, did get the review correspondence letter, and it was what I was like expecting and hoping it would be nothing more complicated, which is they do just need a couple of forms sent in, because ours, like I say, it's almost all automated. It's all done online, but they're like, hey, hang on to your actual, paper copies of these forms. We might ask to see them. And that's pretty much all it was. They're like, yeah, there's a couple of deductions. There's a couple of tax forms. They're like, please just, send images, PDFs or JPEGs of those forms so we can make sure that that's all, exactly according to the records. And as simple as that. So I was pleased that it wasn't anything more involved than that. And so things all worked out pretty well over here. Not too bad at all.
Yeah, it seems like in other places as well, the voting populace has taken a hard look at the U.S. election and went, ooh.
Australia, congratulations to Australia for holding their elections.
I think Germany's also leaning in that direction too. I don't know exactly.
Well, Germany's.
What happened there.
They went. The governing party over there is slightly center right, but they had to form a coalition with the slightly center left in order to have enough seats to govern. So they ended up very, very centrist there in Germany.
Right. So I have a lot of Australian friends, and they were sending me links.
Okay.
To things.
I mean, I'm sure some were upset, some were not. Some were, pleased because, again, the polling early in the year was saying was going to go a completely different way in Australia, very similar to Canada. So, yeah. World over.
All right. So what do we watch, Rob?
Yes, indeed. I'm not seeing anything on Tom's list here, so I don't know if there's a whole bunch for Tom to talk about, even though he has a TV and a nice pair of speakers.
I do have a TV. Now. It's very sad.
Yes, but I watched just one movie. I am continuing on with 2025 Oscar Best Picture nominees. So I watched A Complete Unknown, which is streaming on Disney Plus, at least up here in Canada. And I'm now doing the just getting it as part of the bundle with my cable TV package, which means I could pay a whole bunch extra to get the no ads version, but I'm just watching it with ads. So I'll just say right off the bat, Disney Plus with ads. Not the worst by any means. The commercial interruptions come at logical moments in the movie. It's like actually during a scene transition, unlike Amazon Prime, which is just like middle of a sentence. We're going to show you an ad now because they're just going by time. Disney Plus, they actually seem to have put some logic into it. So it's like, yep, natural scene break. Here comes an ad. 30-second ad breaks was all it was. It was the very same ad every single time. And I think it happened 4 times in the movie, including the one before the movie began. So not a ridiculous, absurd ad load or anything like that, but a little bit of an interruption there. But overall, not too bad. So this movie, A Complete Unknown, it is a biopic of just a 4-year period in Bob Dylan's life, starring Timothée Chalamet portraying Bob Dylan. This is from 1961 to 1965, and it really is like the beginning of his career. So starting off with him meeting up with Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie being Bob Dylan's kind of folk song hero that really got him motivated to get into things. And following this 4-year period, going through sort of his transitions throughout his musical career of that beginning stages, and then following a couple of the relationships. I don't think they by any means portrayed all the many relationships that Bob Dylan had, really focusing on 2, one with Joan Baez, which was pretty well known at the time, very famous singer in her own right, and a lot of collaborations between the two of them. And then they fictionalized his sort of on-again, off-again girlfriend, gave her a different name, although people say, like, yeah, that was the real-life woman in every way except her name, but they, I guess, didn't want to mess around with rights and getting lawsuits and that type of thing. So portrayed by Elle Fanning, sort of his on-again, off-again girlfriend. So this is a beautifully...
Good for her for still having a career, by the way.
She's doing really... She's really good. She's good in everything that I see her in. This... movie, beautifully shot. Cinematography is wonderful in this movie. I wasn't even seeing it in HDR, and I imagine it'd be even better in HDR. But yeah, really nice cinematography, great contrast, great just shot composition. Even though this obviously isn't like some kind of special effects, showcase or anything like that. But there were obviously CGI backgrounds in that because they're changing the way cities look to how they looked in the 1960s and how they look now, and cars in the background and stuff like that. But yeah, seamless and really beautifully shot. Well acted although like the singing was done by the actors themselves, they weren't like dubbing over.
Yeah, he
with
was
the
on
original
Saturday Night
recordings.
Live. He sang on Saturday Night Live too.
Yeah, and I mean the weird thing is Timothée Chalamet is on a technical level a better singer than Bob Dylan. Like, and so the thing is, they didn't try to make the actors in this movie sound like one-for-one replicas to the people they were portraying. They do not. If you play back the original recordings of all these famous singers of the time, and then you hear what was done in the movie, it's like, no, those do not sound the same. So they were going for vibes, right? They were going for the vibe of things in this, and not even really attempting to have anybody sound exactly like the real life people that they're portraying. So yeah, this is a good movie. This is well acted, beautifully produced, all of those things. But the issue that they have is not really their fault. It's that there isn't really a dramatic narrative to this period of time. They tried to turn Bob Dylan's beginning to use electric guitar and bringing in drummers and bringing in other musicians, and still being part of the folk music scene. But like in this movie and in real life, because they didn't try to exaggerate it, but they tried to make this sort of the tension, the drama in the movie, is just that some people dug when he started using electric guitar and some people didn't like it. And it's like, that's not really that much drama. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really a loggerheads conflict. And it's like, so he's at, one of the famous folk music festivals, and he brings out his electric guitar, and some people are like, boo, and some people are like, yay. And Pete Seeger's kind of like, And that's the drama in this movie. It's kind of like, okay, so it's not like a super compelling narrative to this thing. So like I say, it's more about vibes. It's more about, the other part of it is just this on again, off again relationship. And that's mostly the emotional through line in this. But it's like Bob Dylan, as much in real life as we know about him, because he was a pretty private person, and we don't necessarily know what was going on in his head. But, the portrayal in this movie is just like, he was never really happy, and that seems pretty reasonable. It's like, he wanted to sing, and he's prolific. I didn't realize actually how prolific he was. I mean, I knew he was prolific in his songwriting, but, they actually detail just how many albums he'd released, which was, over 55 albums he released on his own and as part of a band. And then, but like all the other songs he wrote for so many other people is insane, the number of songs that he wrote. Really, really remarkable. So it's all in there, but yeah, like I say, just as a movie, as a story, it's kind of like, well, you kind of lack a true beginning, middle, and end. You kind of lack an actual conflict or resolution or anything like that. So yeah, it's kind of tough to judge it in that way. It's not a documentary. It's not a biography. It is a biopic. Things are fictionalized. Events are moved around in time, and people are renamed and amalgamated and all those types of things. So it's not a one-for-one factual recounting of things. So yeah. Anyway, that was a complete unknown. I think it's worth a watch. They almost maybe overdid it on the number of songs, because like I say, Bob Dylan had so many famous songs that they're kind of like, we want to get this song in there. We want to get this song in there. When you get to the credits and you see the list of songs, like it just goes on and on and on, because there's little snippets of songs and everything like that. And they were maybe trying to include a bit too much, which I sympathize. It'd be difficult to say, how do we cut this song out of this movie? It was a really important song and they want to get it in there. So yeah, sure. But yeah, there we go. That was my take. Did you watch anything, Tom?
I did not. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's okay. I didn't.
We have plenty of questions to answer, so we don't need to stretch things out at all.
There's just the end of the school. I always have an excuse, but the reality is that
you don't even need an excuse. It makes sense.
Putting 30 minutes together where I can pay attention to something and not have anybody else, without including my wife, who I've just given up on trying to get her to watch Star Wars.
You mean you don't just have a
Marvel
spare
stuff.
2 hours and 45 minutes to watch Wicked all in one go?
She would watch that. She
Yeah,
would, and she's
great.
interested in watch that. We saw the play, the musical in Orlando, so she would definitely watch that. But like this, for example, this weekend, Friday night, we went to my son's high school has phenomenal drama program, and I say that, remember, like everybody says our drama program is phenomenal, and they're always so impressed. Listen, I am hypercritical.
Okay.
No one likes me. Let's be honest. No one really wants my opinion. They just want me to tell you that things are good, and you want me to tell you that you chose the right speakers, that your TV is the best TV out there, yep. that your bike is perfect and there's nothing wrong with it, and that you're handsome. And none of those things are true. So when I say that, and I have a theater background.
Yep.
I mean, that was my first love. Leaving high school, I went to 2 different colleges to get my bachelor's in drama. Came within one class. I needed one class to get my bachelor's. And I was like, if I get this bachelor's, I'll feel obligated to now be in this career. And I don't want to be in this career because it's just not where I figured out that's not what I wanted to do. So I just dropped out and then went back to school for psychology afterwards. So I do have enough of a background to appreciate good and bad. And it's not just, those moms at American Idol who are like, my daughter or my son can sing like an angel. And they're like, nope, they cannot. So when I say their drama program is good, it's very good. It's remarkably good. And it's also of... like, I leave every single performance going, I don't know how they got away with that. How did they get away with having those themes in this show at a high school in Florida? Like, if you put all those things together. So we went to see Cabaret, which is set at the beginning of World War II, right before World War II really kicks off. And it's set in Germany, in Berlin. And... like at the end of the first act, there's literal Nazis on the stage, and I'm like, the whole audience just gasped. Like when they figured out that the character was a Nazi, everybody just went, and I'm like, I knew it was coming, and I still gasped. But this is a musical, and it's sung, and I just cannot believe how good some of these high schoolers are. I'm like, no wonder it's so hard to get into Hollywood, because these kids are 18 or younger, and they are phenomenal. I mean, could things have been better here and there? Yes. But as a whole, it's amazing. So went to I don't know why I told you all that. Anyway, so Friday night we saw that. Saturday night we went to this Derby party thing, which is the Kentucky Derby. It's a yearly thing. I've talked about it before. You have to wear a hat. It's a yearly thing. And the day was sucked up with me trying to find a hat because all of our hats got flooded.
Right.
Going from yard sale to thrift shop, trying to find a hat that fit my stupid head. And then Sunday my wife left. And that would have been the day I could have watched something. And instead I did not. So there we go. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers. I don't know why I went on that tangent.
That was quite a trip.
That was way out there.
Final sentence summary at the end.
Hey, just let's all remember that there are timestamps, and if you stayed through all that, it was not against your will. You did it yourself. You did it to yourself. I'm sorry. Not enough or too much coffee. You decide. AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV question. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to the website, find the shows, show notes, Flickr albums to follow along with the pictures, previous episodes, and links to all the products and or articles we will be referring to, contact us. I guess there's facebook.com/AVRant podcast, youtube.com where you can youtube.com/AVRant where you can see our live recordings. My face is back up there, which I'm sorry for. I apologize in advance. I've given up on being bald. I'm growing the hair back out because I'd rather be balding than have to shave my head. It is too much work. I don't like it. I like personal grooming as like a hobby, but that's too much. That's like it just.
Well, you can be like me. Just
do
the buzz cut with the clippers instead of the outright shave.
But I just can't see it, and I'm too much of a perfectionist. And I spent like 30 minutes in the shower trying to make sure I didn't miss a spot, and then I'm always worried that there's going to be like one long lock in the back. And my wife is an engineer, and she doesn't notice anything. So I mean. I'm just like, you're no help. So you put it all together, and it just stresses me out too much. YouTube.com, I said that already. Contact us directly, Rob at avrant.com. His socials at First Reflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. Now, we want to thank our listeners of the week. These are people who have supported the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation. And this week, we had Jefferson do that. Thank you very much, Jefferson.
Yeah, Jefferson, thank you very much for that PayPal donation. We really appreciate your financial support.
And it's the first of the month has passed since our last podcast. So if you go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, you can sign up to be a monthly contributor, or you can update your credit card, because that might have happened, because we have
a couple
now
have dropped off. Yeah.
131 patrons instead of 133. We had last episode, so thank you to our 131 patrons.
That is right. That is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation or re-sign up if your credit card expired. So a big, big thank you to our 131 patrons over there.
All right. If you can't send us money in some way, we completely understand. But if you do support us and do something to support us, let us know what it is, and we will mention you here. Vince said if there's anything that he can do to help Rob secure his third Switch 2 pre-order, he'd be happy to help out. So thank you, Vince. I don't know if you took advantage of that or not.
I did not, but I did thank Vince. It was very nice of him to offer. I am being optimistic that I will get an invitation from Nintendo directly to make that one there. I really want that one because I want to pre-order one of those GameCube wireless controllers, and you can only do that through Nintendo directly. And they're like, hey, if you're pre-ordering a console, pre-order your accessories at the exact same time. It'll all come in one order, and that's kind of the only way to get one of those GameCube controllers right at the beginning. So I am crossing my fingers and toes and hoping that invitation comes through.
John sent us a list of free, no time limit video call options in case Jammy or Yammy, whatever it is, doesn't work out for us. He also suggested that Tom could try the KDE distro of Linux, since he's mentioned his various struggles with Windows and drivers and whatnot. So thank you very much, John, for your help.
Yeah, that could be a useful list. We are using Jammy at the moment, so if you're seeing the YouTube video and hearing this podcast, then it has been at least functional, but we are still getting the bouncing voice between left and right ears, so Tom is not opposed to trying something out else in its place, because that might get slightly annoying. But you know what? If we continue on with Jammy, then so far, so good as far as just bare minimum functionality.
And Jammy's weird in that you probably haven't had to do this, but I was using it on my desktop, and I got my laptop back, and I was like, okay, I'll sign in. You can't.
Yeah, you have to do the link the new device to your existing account. I mean, you could have just set up a new account. You only have one contact, which is me, and that wouldn't have been the end of the world. But because it doesn't port your settings over from one device to the other, you got to redo all the settings if you changed any settings. So there's not that much advantage to linking accounts, but.
It's very weird that it makes to me that you can't just sign into this stupid thing. But
because there's no server in between. it's peer-to-peer, device-to-device, so there's no server involved.
Anyways, Karl let us know that if we're only doing a one-on-one video call, the Microsoft Teams allows that to run up to 30 hours. It's only group chats and meetings that have the 1 hour time limit when using the free version and require payment to run longer.
So that could potentially be an option, because all of our Skype contact and chats history moved over to Teams. I've seen it. Mine is over there. But yeah, so I didn't know about that. Microsoft does a terrible job of communicating that, because obviously they want to incentivize you to pay for the subscription. That's what they're trying to do. So you can find somewhere buried in the FAQ, or you know what? If you use the stupid AI thing and you ask that, it does let you know that there is the 30-hour time limit for purely one-on-one calls. That information is there. Karl is absolutely correct, and I appreciate that, because I would not have noticed that on my own.
Yes, thank you. And I have often said that I don't really worry about bigger companies scraping my data or knowing my location and stuff. I am getting to the point where I'm like, it is so bad, it feels like, that I am starting to care, because they're not just like, well, we want to know what ads to serve you. They're now like, I am using this to train my AI.
Yes,
and I'm
they
like,
sure
listen, I don't. None of us needs an AI that was trained off of anything I've
I mean, it
ever.
does explain why AI is so dumb, because it's training off of human interactions and trying to replicate them.
That's. I'm just gonna lie.
So
I'm gonna lie confidently.
Why are the answers from AI not reliable? Why do they change each time you ask the same question? Why is it not factual information? It's like, well, go ask a random human. See what kind of answers you get back.
We also got notes of gratitude. And that's one of the reasons why I don't want to use Teams.
Okay.
With the short, that was
They
that
are
was where I was going
definitely
with that.
training their AI
They are
on
definitely
every conversation in Teams.
Yeah. Anyways, we got notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from Jefferson, Henry, Ryan, Vince, and Jack. And Jack is a member of the original 2 Hour Plus Club. So
That's
thank you very
right.
much to all of you.
Yeah, I'll say the names one more time. We got Jefferson, Henry, Ryan, Vince, and Jack. Thank you very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We definitely appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
In the news, Microsoft has raised Xbox prices, not just here in the United States, but everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's not just the U.S. tariffs, although the U.S. is getting hit with even larger price increases than in everywhere else. Microsoft says they understand that these changes are challenging and they were made with careful consideration given market conditions and the rising cost of development. And also, we need a boat.
I mean,
I added the boat part
these
on,
almost seem like
someone's buying a boat.
These almost seem like they've just given up in the quote-unquote console war. I mean, they're already a pretty distant third behind Nintendo and Sony PlayStation, and this is not going to help that situation. But what is clear is they're just like, we are not taking a loss on this hardware anymore. We are not doing the loss leader thing of taking a loss on every console we sell and making it up in the software, because that just ain't happening, and we are not going to take a loss on this hardware anymore. That is pretty clear.
So in the U.S., $80 more for the Series S, so $380 for the 512 gigabyte black, or $430 for the 1 terabyte white
for a
version.
Series S. That's expensive.
$100 more for the Series X, so $550 for no disk drive, $600 for the disk drive. And $130 more for the 2 terabyte Galaxy Special Edition, so $730, which is $30 more than the PS5 Pro.
Yeah, and there's no graphics card update in that 2 terabyte
Right.
Galaxy Special Edition. Is the exact same innards as the other Series X. It's just got 2 terabyte of memory built in and a fancier cover on the outside. It does come with a disk drive that is in there, and they've discontinued the regular disk drive version, even though they raised the price on remaining stock up to $600 from $500. That is a discontinued model, so once that stock is gone, if you want a disk drive, it's the Galaxy Special Edition at $730. That is, why not just get a PC at that point? Crazy.
That is true. Some controllers and headsets also went up by $10, or a $20 increase to an even $200 for the Elite Wireless Controller Series 2. The controller better be amazing.
No kidding.
$200.
It's like the cost of a console back in the day for a single controller.
In the UK and the EU, they basically went for round numbers. So even though it makes for uneven currency conversions, the console prices have gone up €50 and £50, while accessories all got a €5 and £5 increase. So
yeah, that's a bad deal for the UK. That is not great. The euro is fairly close to US dollars at this point in currency conversion, but the UK pound is definitely worth more than a US dollar, and so for just being round figure amounts is a bad deal for the UK.
So in Australia, they kind of sort of made out a little bit better than other countries considering the currency exchange rate. So it's $50 Australian console price increases and $10 Australian accessory price increases.
It does mean, though, that if you're looking at that 2 terabyte Galaxy Special Edition, it now costs 1,050 Australian dollars for an Xbox.
In Canada, Canada didn't get quite as good a deal as Australia, but still better than the US considering the exchange rate. So $80 Canadian console increases and $10 Canadian accessory increases. So whatever. And on top of all the hardware price increases, new first-party games will sell for $80 US, €80, £80, which is $110 Canadian. Nintendo did it first with the $80 price tag for Mario Kart World, and clearly Microsoft thought, hey, good idea. Somebody else did it first, so we can point to them and say it's their fault.
Yes, you can be absolutely assured that if you are purchasing Call of Duty, it will be $80, it will be €80, it will be £80, it will be 110 Canadian dollars.
And it will be not complete, and there will be paid downloads.
You got to download pretty much the entire thing. It's a massive download on day one, because what comes on the disc is essentially a token at this point.
Yeah. So that one part of Xbox that did not go up in price was the Xbox Game Pass subscription. Yeah. So it clearly seems like they really, really want people to subscribe, because then they can take things away from you more easily.
Also, once you're locked in, they will be raising that price at some point. PlayStation raised the price of their PlayStation Plus subscription service. So that's... What a time. We're 5 years into this console generation, and they're like, let's raise the price by $100. We haven't seen that before.
Usually how that goes. Usually is
a little unusual.
Things get more older, they get more expensive, right? Is it aging like wine? Is that what's happening?
What a perceptual gift they just gave to Nintendo there, because everyone was kind of complaining about the Nintendo Switch 2 prices at the beginning, but now they look like a fantastic deal. So it's like, well, thanks Microsoft and Sony for raising the prices on your...
Maybe that's how they're making their money. They're Nintendo's just bribing them to raise the prices.
I don't think that's going on.
Could be. You don't know.
Oh, man.
Oh, one thing that did happen, I'm thinking about this because the dog's walking by. Mm-hmm. There's a, now 4-month-old puppy that's in this apartment complex, and everybody's obsessed over him. Okay. So that's all we do is go, whenever he comes out, he has like a gaggle of people following him around. So if I suddenly sprint out of the apartment, it's because Azul, yes, his name is Azul, goes walking by. Fluance has released a new Reference Ri. Is that Ri? Is that what that's supposed to be?
Ri.
Series. I don't know what that means. Self-powered speakers. They feature new air motion tweeters, which are folding ribbons, mounted in a waveguide for wider, more even dispersion, and woven glass fiber woofers, similar to the AI series self-powered speakers that we've recommended many times on the podcast. Mm-hmm. The Ri, I guess A was for...
I'm not sure.
Air motion, I guess.
No, because the AI series had soft silk dome tweeters. So the R is maybe for ribbon, RI, but it's actually
R is definitely for ribbon.
No, the R is actually
for
reference.
What's the A for?
I don't know.
You think it's for reference?
Yeah, the R is for reference.
I don't know.
Anyway, RI-71. That's the bookshelf self-powered
The RI-71 self-powered bookshelf speakers come in black, walnut, or white. Finish options for $400 a pair. The woofer is 5 1/4 with an extension down to 46 hertz using a front slot port. Inside one of the speakers are two 60-watt amps. The second speaker is passively powered using standard speaker wire connections, which is pretty common with this solution. Yeah. I've always had... I guess... It always bothers me that there's both of the amps are in one speaker, because then the cabinet of the second one is either one cabinet is its internal volume is diminished because of the presence of the amps, or the second cabinet is overly large and blocked off in order to have the same internal volume as the other one. And it has always bothered me that they do that. I understand why they do it. It makes sense. I'm not mad about the fact that I don't have to have two powered connections or whatever. But it's always bothered me.
At least Fluance is good about letting you choose with the settings whether the one that has the amplifiers physically built in is the left speaker or the right speaker, because there are some, especially going back several years, that didn't let you choose, and it was like, hey, if my wall outlet is actually on the other side, it would be way more convenient to make this the left speaker instead of the right speaker. You didn't have that option, but these, they let you change it.
So the amplifier is DSP controlled to maximize output while decreasing distortion, and RCA subwoofer output automatically activates a 80 Hz crossover when in use. There's no optical port, but there are RCA inputs and an HDMI-ARC input. The speakers come with a remote. while the volume dial on the speakers themselves is mounted on the back of the speaker and sticks up just a tiny bit on top for you to roll your fingers left and right to adjust the volumes. Like you can slide it.
Yeah,
back
so
and
like
forth.
we don't want an ugly volume knob on the front of these speakers, so you just like reach on the top and just roll your hand left and right on that little tiny dial up there.
That's fine. Bluetooth is the other input option. It supports both aptX HD and low latency. The RI91 tower also comes in black walnut or white finish options for $800 a pair. The same AMT tweeter is mated to a pair of 6.5-inch woofers in each speaker for that 40 Hz extension using the front slot port at the bottom of the cabinet. There are two 75-watt amplifier channels for this larger speaker, and it gains an extra pair of RCA inputs with the same HDMI-ARC and Bluetooth options as the bookshelf model. So yeah, probably, $800 reasonable. It's less than the PlayStation, less than the Xbox. So there's that.
That's right. So, Kef, I feel, kind of got the ball rolling on the self-powered towers with everything built into them, including an HDMI-ARC port with those, what is it, LS60? Is that the model for the towers? Because, the LS50s were the bookshelves that was around for a couple of years, and then they did the tower thing. But those are up at, what are they, $6,500, $7,000 for a pair? Something like that. These are almost an order of magnitude less expensive, so definitely hitting a much more lower price point and might be attractive. These do not appear to have even an option for grills. There seems to be no mention, no images of these Fluance speakers with any grills on them. So you're going to be seeing that AMT tweeter in its waveguide. You're going to be seeing these white-colored woofers with the concave dust caps on them. So there's no protrusions on here. Everything looks very smooth, and it looks quite nice. I don't mind the looks of these at all. So yeah, I think these are going to be a likely candidate for getting recommended for certain applications around here, because I really like having these self-powered speakers with the HDMI-ARC port on them. That makes them a very simple soundbar alternative, and that they come with a remote control in there as well means that, these can definitely be in place of almost any standard soundbar, and I would bet dollars to donuts sound a lot better than a lot of soundbars that are out there.
Yeah, the LS60s are the towers from CAF. Comments. Infinite Gary, just heads up for anyone who's thinking they might be able to get the $2,000 price on the new Kaleidescape Strato M reduced even further with a bit of haggling. $2,000, as you will recognize, is 2 Xboxes. Mm-hmm. Gary is in regular contact with multiple dealers and retailers, and we all know he buys a lot of stuff. Those dealers like him. They've all let him know there's zero wiggle room on that Strato M, already very low margin, and it's close to being a loss leader for Kaleidescape, with the hope essentially being that people who dip their toe in via the Strato M will eventually add on and upgrade with the more expensive Kaleidescape products. The storage is certainly,
if you end up with the storage, that's exactly what they're hoping will happen at some point.
As we mentioned before, Kaleidescape doesn't really make any money from selling the movies in their online store. The studios get virtually all of that money, so Kaleidescape and their dealers have to make profit on the hardware sales, and the Strato M is already close to zero profit. So if they tell you they really cannot discount the price, it's not them being unreasonable. I think it's so weird in the United States, at least, to ask for discounts on things. But people do it. I know they do. They're like, is there any wiggle room on this price? Mm-hmm. No. Would you go to a grocery store and ask that? Mm-hmm. It's weird. It's weird. But
some people
do it.
Yep.
And I find that strange. Karl got a tip from one of our favorite projector retailers, AV Science. They say it's been a while since they've had any stock of refurbished JVC projectors directly from JVC themselves, but they've got a batch coming in this week.
Yes, as you're hearing this, if you're hearing this podcast right as it releases, then that's when it's happening. Okay.
It's the previous series, and it's the JVC Pro RS models. Mm-hmm. So the RS 1100, same as the NP5. The RS 2100, same as the NZ7. The RS 3100, which is the NZ8. And the RS 4100, NZ9. Mm-hmm. There are also a very limited number of the new flagship RS 4200, which is the NZ900. Yeah. So we've been waiting for a deal on the JVC projector. Get in touch with AV Science right away. They're including ground shipping to the lower 48 states. And since this is B-Stock directly from JVC, they come with a 1-year warranty, not just 90 days or a third-party warranty that you'd have to get. So Yeah, jump on it, man.
Yeah,
Jump on it.
we're a small audience. AV Science isn't like advertising this, so I don't think we're doing anything wrong by letting people know. By the time you hear this, it might be too late anyway. They don't have oodles and oodles of stock in these things, but it might just be the deal someone was waiting for, and they might get lucky.
There you go. I can think of a listener who's probably kicking himself. He's got a UB5050, but I bet he's chomping at the bit for something one of these. Questions. Tim and his wife are designing a new house to be built from the ground up. Naturally, Tim wants to have a home theater. He's fine with it being more of a media room as opposed to a pitch black dedicated home theater. Well, I'm not fine with that. Mm-hmm. So let's not.
You know
do
how
that
much
instead.
Tom likes a black ceiling.
Yeah, well, not quite that bad. But when you're only planning a new house on paper, it's easy to dream big. And in their case, the square footage quickly got a little out of hand. It is nuts. So with reality setting in, they need to look for ways to decrease the square footage. One dramatic proposal was to eliminate the media room / theater altogether, but that seems unnecessary and extreme to Tim, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
When he took a step back, he had to admit about 80% of the time, it's only going to be 1 or 2 people actually using the theater, maybe 15% of the time. There will be 3 or 4 people in there, and about 5% of the time, there might be 6 to 8 people at most. So realistically, this does not need to be a large, overly expensive room, which brings him to asking us some advice about planning out a dream but affordable small home theater. The main thing he really needs to nail down are the dimensions. He was envisioning a 4K projector with a giant screen, but now that we know the sort of seating capacity that he actually needs, perhaps a flat panel makes more sense. What would he like? What he would like from us is a suggestion for a definitive minimum size this room needs to be in order to fit what he wants, and then what would be our preferred dimensions and room size? Same as that definitive minimum, or maybe a little bit larger. Hit him with the numbers. So if you're going to go with the screen that is okay, so there's a couple of ways to deal with this. I would think about the number of permanent rows of seats in this room. Okay, and then if there's more than one row, how many of those rows are you going to have? So, if you are of the opinion, you're like, okay, well, most of the time it's just going to be 1 or 2 people in here. So if we have a 3 or 4 seater couch, let's say 4-seater couch, at the optimal distance from eyes to screen, and that's almost all the time that it's going to be used, because 3 or 4 people is 95% of the time.
That's right.
Right. So that's one couch. 95% of the time, and then maybe there'll be more people in here every once in a while. Yeah. Well, then it sounds like what you really need is 1 row. And then that 1 row can be, 2 rows of 2 recliners, which would be weird. But 1 row, and that row needs to be at that optimal location. So usually the optimal location is either a third of the way into the room from the front or a third of the way into the room from the back. And either way, you can decide, hey, I want there to be that would then determine the size of the screen that you have, and actually the whole distance of the room. So I would do something along the lines of like 20 something feet by 20, maybe 25 feet by maybe 13, 14 to 15 feet wide. Okay. Just going off the top of my head.
That's like preferred dimensions, Tom is sort of talking about here. Like that'd be nice and comfortable. Leave you enough space for 2 rows without the second row being like slammed against the back wall.
Yeah. Even with that, you could actually slam that back row against depending on what else, because you could call it a media room. So I don't know what else might be in here if you want to put a desk at the back.
I think what he's meaning by media room is like it really is a home theater, but it's just not going to be black walls. It's not going to be black velvet everywhere. It's not going to be 100% light controlled. It's going to be like, okay, we're going to be watching with some lights on, or there's a window, and we're not going to completely, tin foil over it so that there's 0 light leakage. Like, it's just going to be a more comfortable room, but it really is a theater. Yeah.
I will tell you that if I were doing this, what I would do is go with my wife to a furniture store and find the couch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
I agree. You kind of start with the seating in this case. That almost determines the rest of it.
Because that determines, a lot of it. Because you want to have a walkway. At least on one, you have to have a walkway on one side of this couch.
At least on one side, and preferably there would be a gap on both sides, so that when you do have 4 people sitting on this, we're gonna kind of assume a 4-seater couch is what you're aiming for. That the person sitting on the side closest to the wall doesn't literally have a surround speaker like inches from their head. Preferably got a little bit of a gap on both sides. Yeah.
Excuse me. That's kind of the way my theater was, where the couch was slammed up against one wall, and the surround speaker was very close to that one seat right there. And nobody really complained about it. But if there's going to be 2 of you in here, it would be nice for it not to be. That's why I started off with 13 feet. But then most couches that sit 4 people are at least 10 feet wide.
Yeah.
So that only gives you a walkway on one side, and that's why I kind of bumped it up to 15 feet as a width, and that just gives you enough room to put a little bit of a walkway on both sides, or a little bit of maybe more distance on one side than the other.
Sure.
But you
can have 3 feet on one side, 2 feet on the other. Yeah.
And then you got to think about the size of the screen you want to buy, and you can really then you're going eyes to screen, right? Yeah. So you're either in the front third of the room or you're in the back third of the room, or just a little bit off middle. It doesn't have to be like in the dead on third of the room. You're gonna recline a little bit. So then you look at eyes to screen, how big it, and then that tells you, well, I don't want to spend $30,000 on a 100-inch LCD. I'd rather spend $2,000-$3,000 on a beautiful 83-inch OLED. Or maybe I want even smaller than that because I want to save money in that. Because then you can just shrink the distance to the screen, and you know exactly where your couch is going to be, and that might determine the whole, all the rest of the stuff. So you kind of build it. To me, you build it out that way. So Rob, do your thing.
Yeah, so for a definitive minimum that he was asking for, like I am really shrinking this down to like the smallest I would feel comfortable recommending for the use case that you've described. So for that, I'm looking at, yes, a 4-seater couch. I can't really picture anything else as being the main seats, but I've tried to look up one that's like on the narrower side of things, right? Some 4-seater couches are pretty wide, but there are definitely ones where, the armrests aren't overly sized. The width of each seat is not crazy, but it's still comfortable. So with that, I'm like the narrowest I would go in this room is 13 and a half feet. So that is assuming that you're getting a narrower 4-seater couch and then leaving only like 2.5 feet or 3 feet on one side, 2 feet on the other, like Tom described, enough that you got a little bit of a walkway on both sides, but narrow, like minimum here. But what was the definitive minimum? That's exactly what I've worked out there. So yeah, 13 and a half feet wide. And then I'm picturing in this scenario, like I can't really picture going for less than an 83-inch or 85-inch TV when we're using a 4-seater couch as the seating. To me, anything smaller than that is going to really feel small, and it's going to feel like once you get your seats close enough to, say, a 75-inch screen, for it to feel like a theatrical presentation and not just I'm watching a TV. Like somebody's feet are going to be really close to that TV by that point. I'm just like, I would picture like an 83 or an 85-inch, and yeah, like an 83-inch OLED is going to look spectacular. So 7.5, 8 feet from eyes to screen. That's what I'm picturing here. And then, what I'm picturing there is, okay, TV is either wall-mounted, or I would actually prefer to maybe put it on a stand. That way you've got a little bit of space behind the TV. It moves the TV that little bit closer to your eyes without it feeling like it really moved any closer, because it's just sitting on a TV stand that's there anyway. And that gives you room to put acoustic treatment covering the majority of that front wall, including behind the TV screen, because you're not going to have a ton of extra room in here for acoustic treatment, and I want you to have some, and the front wall is going to be primary to that. So what I've got here is you're sitting just behind the halfway point, 8 feet or 8.5 feet from the physical front wall. And then I want another 7 feet behind that, because that's just enough space to bring in 4 bar stools, or maybe put just a non-reclining basic couch back there, basically against the back wall. You can still have maybe a foot to a foot and a half from the physical back wall to the back of those seats, so that they're not completely slammed against the back wall. But yeah, that's sort of there. So basically 13 and a half feet wide, 15 feet long. That is the bare minimum. That's the definitive minimum that I would suggest for the use case that you said. And I mean, that is a spare bedroom, right? That's not crazy dimensions that no builder has ever heard of. 13 and a half feet by 15 feet is a fairly typical room size that I think you could probably find room for. Now, if I'm going for what do I feel would be comfortable, what would be my preference, I'm pretty similar to Tom. I would actually now consider like maybe you actually go theater recliners that have a little bit of a curve in between some of those seats, that you have a better angle to the television screen. I'm bumping up to a 98-inch LCD. I'm not really picturing in a media room that isn't fully light controlled. I'm like, let's just get a flat panel, because we can get a 98-inch flat panel for a very reasonable price these days. Now, basically the 100-inch size, you can sit 9 feet away from that. That's very comfortable. That's a very comfortable viewing distance sitting 9 feet away, and that still gives you a 45-degree field of view for the primary seats. So I'm picturing maybe a curved row of 4. So now I want to increase the width because that's made the whole seating wider. I want 3 feet of walkway on either side. I'm now at a 17-foot room width, so even a little bit wider than what Tom described, but that makes it very, very almost luxurious feeling at this point. That's a really nice size. And then 19 or 20 feet long. Now you can have a proper second row if you want to. They could even be recliners in the back row, and the back row wouldn't have to be against the back wall. You could have surround back speakers in a room that size. But 17 by 19, 17 by 20, that's a sizable room. That's not insignificant if you're adding it to the square footage of the house. But you said, hey, what would be preferable and comfortable? That's the dimensions I come up with.
And this is what I'm going to suggest as far as this room. You stop thinking of it as a home theater / media room, and instead think of it as like a ensuite or a mother-in-law. A lot of times they call them mother-in-law suites.
Okay, yeah.
Situation. So what you're building is not a home theater. What you're building is a bedroom with an attached bath that is not the master.
Okay.
Now that bath could be attached to another room, or it could be like a Jack and Jill is what they call
the
those.
Pass-through.
You could do that, but the idea here is that this is going to be a slightly larger bedroom that might be for somebody that has to come live with you later on in life.
Yeah, very usable, very resellable. Yeah.
Yes, but right now you're setting it up as a home theater. You don't want this to be. You want to think of this as another bedroom, as a large mother-in-law suite with either a dedicated or a shared bathroom, so that when you go to resell this house, you just say, "Oh, we set up a home theater in here, but this is a mother-in-law suite."
Yeah, and I mean, if you ended up with dimensions that are in between the two that I mentioned, like 14 by 16 or something like that, that's a very reasonable, medium-sized bedroom. It's not small. It's not, cramped, but it's not gigantic. We're not talking some huge, 20-foot by 30-foot space. And that's the sort of thing that I would aim for sure.
Let's talk about the display. He's thinking the max budget will be in the $5,000 to $6,000 area. So an entry-level JVC or Sony projector or an 83-inch OLED are mainly what he has in mind. He's really interested in hearing us talk through the full idea of building and equipping a dream but small home theater media room. So on the display side of things, how would that go in our opinions? There's no world in which I get a projector.
For this setup,
there's just no world. Right, okay. For years on this podcast, we would suggest projectors for many, many situations similar to this one because dollar for dollar, it made sense to get a projector.
At that time, 85-inch flat panels were really expensive and 98-inch flat panels didn't exist.
Yeah. Yes. So you put all that together and you're like, okay, if you want a screen that a reasonable size image that was bigger than 65.
Yeah.
You had to go projector.
Yeah.
And dollar for dollar, you got more screen for less money with the projector. That is no longer the case. I am sorry. In most homes, you don't need a 120-inch, 135-inch screen. You just don't. And
I mean, for the ones that do, it's great that those exist. Yeah.
And when you do, a lot of times those situations or something like, oh, I sit 13 feet away from my screen, but I'm also not in a light controlled room. And then you're like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Get some light control or get a flat panel. You know what I mean? Those are your options. Yeah. So most of the time we've now migrated over to suggesting flat panels, and it's because dollar for dollar you get better performance, you get most of the screen size, which can be offset by putting it on a piece of furniture and moving it into the room slightly, which does not look unnatural at all.
No.
In your case, because I'm already thinking about the future. Oh, it's my dream house. I'm never moving out. Yeah, you don't know what your life's going to do. Setting up a projector in here, have a pole coming down through the ceiling to hold that projector, doing all of that stuff. Mounting a screen on the wall, all those things is, that is going to make your life more difficult later when you could just get a flat panel, put it on a piece of furniture, and you're done.
Yeah.
And it also costs less, and you get better. An OLED compared to an entry level any projector, it just doesn't.
Well,
it doesn't,
quote unquote entry level, because I mean, even the entry level JVC and Sony are very, very nice. But yeah, so I mean, if you're going for the definitive minimum dimensions that I mentioned, that it's going to be an 83 or an 85 inch, and I would spring for that OLED. That'd be great. But yeah, to me, like sitting 9 feet away from the screen is more comfortable. It is physically more comfortable, and if your room size allows it, if you do have enough square footage, then go have a look at some of those, like the flagship, so the 8 series TCL 98 inch. Like, have a look at that thing. Is it literally as good as an OLED? No. I can point out, the few little bits where the OLED is still, but I'm like, it's really, really good. And when that size is there, you can't make up for that size. Would I love to have a 97-inch OLED? Sure, but that is tens of thousands of dollars more. It's a gigantic price increase. So what you can get for $5,000 for a 98-inch flat panel, have a look. I think you'll be convinced. But that's where I land. It's going to be one of those two. If you go for the definitive minimum, I'm getting an 83-inch OLED. If you have the little bit more size where you can have a 9-foot seating distance, I'm getting a 98-inch TCL.
So he does want the sound system to be an immersive audio setup that can do Atmos properly, but what's the minimum channel count and number of speakers and subwoofers we would suggest in order to achieve that? 5.2.4.
Yep. Agreed. 5.2.4. That's going to, especially if you're in that definitive minimum size, you don't want more speakers than that. If you end up with the 17 by 20 foot room somehow, I would consider adding surround backs at that point. I don't think that's unreasonable to do if you end up with that considerably larger room size. But yeah, if you're closer to the minimum, then 5.2.4.
Yeah. That's what. Could we talk out loud and brainstorm our way through the rest of his setup for him? What speakers and subs will we go for? What powers all those speakers, seating, acoustic treatments? He's starting with a blank slate here. So if we were in this position, what does our own plan look like? I mean, we would need to know definitively how many windows are going to be in this room, where they're going to be, and where's the door. But I guess in a room where that doesn't have any of those things, you just slide in from the ceiling somehow. I don't know. I would love to have a couple of. I mean, I love my cylinder subs. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But I would probably go with a couple of box subs that are midway in the side walls.
Yep. If you've got the walkway space for them. Yeah, might not.
Yeah, bookshelf or satellite speakers.
Bookshelves
up front.
For sure. Yeah.
Satellite speakers all around.
Mm-hmm.
In-ceiling speakers, properly placed. Like which speakers, I don't know. It doesn't really matter because there's you're really close to all of these, and there's a lot of really good options. So I mean, I'm fine with recommending SVS. I'm fine with recommending KEF. I'm fine with recommending Aperion or any of the other. I mean, there's also some good KEF Klipsch speakers out there that you could get if you really wanted to. Do I suggest them? I mean, sure, whatever. I don't care.
I mean, the reference premieres are really nice. I like the reference premiere series from Klipsch very much.
So, I mean, could you spend a lot more? Yeah, you could, but I don't think you really need to. I am also just don't kill yourself trying to make this like a false wall with all the speakers behind the that are hidden and all these other things. For me, that just, I mean, if there's no aesthetic reason to do these things, if it's just like I just think it'll look cool I've always wanted to have this. Well, whatever. You're going to get it and go, well, I spent a bunch of money to not see the speakers that I just spent a bunch of money on. I would rather just see the speakers myself. And most of the time you're in this room, you're not going to see them anyways because the lights are going to be off. So, I mean, for me, that's, you know, as far as the speakers are concerned, that's what I would do. Powering these things is not going to be a problem. I mean, any receiver we're going to recommend is going to do it because you're going to be sitting close enough to them.
What are the chances we're not getting a Denon X3800H? I mean, there's almost no world where in this setup I'm not getting a Denon X3800H. I could now if it's like I've got to get the absolute lowest price, I've got to bring the bottom line down, then I'm going to accessories for less, and I'm getting an Onkyo NR7100 for $600 because you can't beat that. Now that's stopping at 9. You're not ever going beyond that. But if I'm in that definitive minimum and everything is minimum, then I'm getting an Onkyo NR7100. But otherwise, it's a Denon X3800H powering this thing and if I do have the slightly larger size, I've got the room. I can add amplifiers if I want to. I can go up to 11 speakers, and it's got every feature I could possibly want for a really attractive price. If I'm in the definitive minimum room size that I talked about, I'm probably getting RSL Speedwoofer 10S Mark IIs for the pair of subs because the price point is fantastic. They're the perfect size for that room size. They're the perfect output extension capabilities and price that works really well in that size. And you can have choice of black or white. Maybe media room, you'd rather have a white finish on them, and that's not necessarily that common. If I'm in the larger room size, I might be RSL as well and get the Speedwoofer 12 instead because that's for price. In terms of price for the output, it's like that's a really hard one to beat. But again, if I'm going for like lowest price and the slightly larger room size, I might also look at HSU for the VTF2 Mark V, not the crazy bigger ones. The VTF2 Mark V would be a really good choice in there, and a little bit lower price point. Not very much, like $50 less, so not a huge difference there. Speakers, like I might go all RSL. If I'm in the smaller room size, like price, looks, all of that, I'm like, RSL is a really attractive option. I could get the whole package from them and be really happy. Also, knowing me, I would, of course, be looking at Ascend. I'd be looking at, the now SE2 series, because I like some CMT 340 SE2s up front, some HTM 200 SE2s mounted on the walls and overhead, like, bingo bango, that's a superb sounding system that doesn't break the bank, but plain black looks. The RSLs actually kind of look nicer. Maybe I'm spending a little bit more and getting some RBH impression series, maybe with the folded ribbon tweeters.
I was just gonna say, if I wanted to spend more, if I was like, oh my god, Tom and Rob saved me so much money. I would like to have like some better sounding speakers to make sure I'm getting like all the audio to die with speakers.
Although the Ascends already come really close to that, but they don't have the looks. The Ascends don't have the looks. So I'm like, if I value looks here, because again, media room, not blacked out theater, I'm like, maybe the RSLs look a little nicer. Maybe the RBHs the RBHs definitely look a little bit nicer, and have finish options there. Whereas the Ascends are just very, very plain matte black. So if it's the lights out, I'm getting the Ascends. I don't think I can beat that bang for buck price for performance, but if I want the looks, then I've got the two options on either side. And like you say, it's like, if you just love the way the Kef speakers look, like get you some Kefs, man. Some Kef Q series, gonna be fantastic in here. So lots of good options there. If you went all SVS, we wouldn't bat an eye. We'd be like, great choice, fantastic option there. So I think we're really good there. And acoustic treatments, I'm treating that front wall. That's gonna be my main thing I'm treating in here. I'm basically, and that could be DIY. That can honestly be DIY. Like 3.5 inches of insulation with a 1-inch air gap. Like that's the whole front wall. Just done. Done and dusted.
Yeah, I'm okay with that as a front wall, but I think the panels on the side walls, you should go art panels.
Make them decoration.
Yep. Figure out some art that you want to have. Like my parents, oh my God, I'm so mad at them for so many reasons, but my parents and I have struggled with this idea of getting acoustic treatments in their house. Not the new one, any place they've ever lived, because their houses are always echoey like crazy because they're big, and then hardwood. My mom likes hardwood and tile and stuff because it's easier to keep clean than carpet. She doesn't like carpet that much. So I'm just like, can you just put some acoustic treatments up here? And they hired some guy to go to like stores here and find artwork for them. I'm like, it's just random artwork. It doesn't mean anything to you. Your last house, all the stuff on the wall was just pictures of us and the family, and then a bunch of religious crap.
Could also be sent in and printed on acoustic panels.
But they won't do that.
Personal photos. Yeah.
They don't want to do that. Whatever. But now they've got all this artwork up on the walls, and I'm like, it's just the color that
Any of that
matches
could
all
have been
everything else.
could have been panels.
Every single one of these could have been an acoustic panel, but you just won't. You won't do it.
If you go to Acoustamac, they've got a huge selection of stock images, including ones that are like pre-printed, like their most popular ones, pre-printed and ready to go at a lower price than the custom ones. Yeah. It's like that could be a great option if you're just getting, normal artwork because you just want some nice color and shapes on the walls. That's a great option over at Acoustamac.
Yeah, so I would definitely go art panels in here, and we've got all sorts of recommendations for how you can get movie posters like stuff that's up there and all of that. So I would that's what I would do, and then I would paint it one of the grays that we've talked about, and if you
no one will bat an eye if you're reselling.
Yeah, if you try to make your front wall the entire mostly covered with panels, you can either make them the same color, or you can make them black, or you can make them an accent color, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You're gonna have a flat panel in here anyways, and then invest a couple of dollars in some blackout curtains for the times that you are watching. Art has been using an all B&W speaker setup, CM6 towers with a CMC2 center up front, with a pair of CM2 bookshelf speakers as surrounds on speaker stands, and a pair of ASW 300 subs. The two B&W subs are both in the front of the room, positioned on either side of the credenza that has his center speaker on top of it, and just below his wall-mounted TV. The back of his setup is open to the dining and kitchen area, so having both subs up front was really the only position that made sense for the layout, which is pretty common.
Understandable.
He found an SVS 2531 PCI cylinder sub that someone was selling locally for only $100. So he snapped it up. He put it at the front of his room, in between his right side B&W sub and his front right tower speaker. He says he dialed it in with the SVS cylinder acting as the only sub, and then he switched back and forth between using just the SVS sub plus his speakers versus his two B&W subs plus his speakers to make an A and B comparison. He used various music tracks that he's familiar with for his comparison and listening tests, as well as a few movies. With just the one SVS sub plus the speakers, he thought it sounded good once he had it dialed in, but when he switched back to his two B&W subs plus the speakers, he thought that combination sounded more cohesive, as though the sound from top to bottom was more consistent. I don't know what that means, but whatever.
I guess he's feeling SVS, with the SVS, he's like, I can kind of tell when it moves over to the sub versus with the all B&W setup, it was like that's one cohesive speaker from top to bottom. Can't tell where the speakers end and the subs begin.
So the SVS provided more impact and it played some very low rumbles, a lot louder than his two B&W subs, but it seemed to lack some definition when playing music as compared to the two B&W subs along with the speakers. Well, this sounds like a marketing thing. But now he would like to hear our thoughts on all of that. Are the differences he heard just down to the inherent performance characteristics of the two different subwoofer setups, or is there a way to replicate his pair of B&W subs with a single SVS cylinder, gain those louder rumbles and greater impact, but keep the same cohesiveness and definition of music? First of all, your two subs that you have, they cannot play as low, so that's just...
Definitely.
That's just
that is an objective difference. There
objective
are
difference
low notes that the SVS can produce at a louder volume than the B&W subs. That is an objective difference.
So the second thing is that I know that you've placed these as best you can, but you're trying to kind of do a test here, and there's a lot of variables that are affecting how you're experiencing this. Not the least of which is there is a virtual subwoofer between your two subs that are playing in unison. And that is the location that the sound, if you will, is kind of, it's not to say coming from, but that is where that if there was, you were doing an A-B comparison, you would put the subs right next to each other, but now you've got one sub in a corner, basically, which is where the SVS is, and one sub in the middle of the room, right below the TV, because it's a virtual sub, if you will, between those two.
Almost like it's centered below the center speaker there.
So you've taken one and you've put it, one that can play much lower, and you've tried to level match it or done whatever you've done to it, but you've stuck it in a corner where it's going to get certain frequencies that are going to be boosted in different ways than the one virtual sub that's in the middle of the front wall. and then saying, hey, one sounds a little boomier and not as good for music, and these other two, or the virtual one that's in the middle of the room isn't as boomy because it can't play as low, and also it's not shoved in the corner. There's a lot of stuff going on here.
Or there could be a little swoop, right? There's a little hump followed immediately by a dip, and no matter what you're doing with like manually setting up EQ or crossovers, there's gonna be that wobble in the transition.
Yeah. So if you wanted to do a more A/B comparison between these two subs, just on the positioning of the sub, you would take the SVS sub and put it directly below your center speaker to start with. That would give a more accurate, and still it's problematic, but more accurate A/B comparison between these two subwoofer systems that you have set up here. And we're not even getting to the fact that you've lived with the B&W for a long time.
That's what you're used to.
All these biases. Yeah. That not just what you're used to. Your ear has been trained by these subs, by this room and this sub setup in a certain way, and now you're adding a different thing to it. It sounds different. Well, of course it's different. It's positioned differently. It has different performance. There's a lot of things that are different about it. So does different mean better? Does different mean worse? That's where you have to start looking at your personal biases as far as your mental state. Like, do I want this sub to be the better of the two, and will I convince myself of it no matter what? Whichever one you are like, I think that the B&Ws, because of everything I've read and everything else, is going to be more musical, and I'm going to convince myself of that. And that happens with professional reviewers.
Absolutely.
This is not me saying that you are somehow doing this on purpose or whatever, or that this is just how people work. I've seen it happen. I've had long discussions with people via text and email who have been in a test, heard a thing, then the results of the test came out and they're like, that's not what I heard. I'm like, what? It's on paper. You wrote it down. This is what you said you heard. Well, no. I must have had. This must be why I heard that, because what I really know about this speakers, they'll walk it back so hard that they're moonwalking. They're Michael Jacksoning in this thing.
No, they're being a real, audible, genuine, measurable as well difference in the frequency response between these two different subwoofer setups. That I don't doubt for a second. I would. It's expected, in fact.
When you're level matching, I don't know what you did as far as setting these things up, but let's pretend all you did was level match. The fact that these lower frequencies are being excited in your room for the very first time, and maybe there's a bass boost there that's going to make your level matching such that when the SVS gets level matched, it's getting level matched to this 6 or 12 dB bump that's happening at this one, these couple of frequencies very low, so that when you're playing music, which doesn't have any of these frequencies, suddenly the SVS doesn't sound like it's really contributing all that much. It's really only sounding like it's contributing at those very specific frequencies that are down low. And that can't really be EQ'd out that much because of how your room works and how powerful whatever room correction system that you're using. So now suddenly you play it with music instead of sweeps, which I'm sure Rob's going to get into very quickly here. But you start playing with music, you're like, the B&W sound more musical because they're contributing more to the music. Well, they're contributing more to the music because they're not exciting those lower frequencies that would have taken the overall volume of the subwoofers down. And the
masking effect that adding lower frequencies, even when you're completely aware of it and you know it and you try to ignore it or not base your judgment off it, we cannot do it. Human beings can't do it. The masking effect.
I can't do it. I've been doing this for over 20 years. Okay. That's right. I can't do it. And you'll hear me in reviews or read me in reviews talking about the fact that it is impossible for me to make a really cohesive, cognizant, non-subjective or objective evaluation of something of an A/B test I'm trying to do between two headphones. It's just not possible. There's only so much you can do. You can A/B them, and if they are the number of things that go on between me taking off the headphones or switching between two headphones or reconnecting and disconnecting the Bluetooth in order to do the headphones, or the earplugs I did recently where I'm like, I don't know how to tell you the sound quality, how well it preserved the sound quality when I put the earplugs in, because I needed to level match in order to do that. And that means turning the volume of the headphones way up. And then how do I level match that? By ear? how do I do that? So it's very, very hard to do. So, living the best that you can do, I think, is position them as best you can in your room, which you seem to have done.
Sure. Yeah, just logistically.
Even though there's probably, logistically, there may be other places for this SVS to go by itself, which you could then test out and then say, okay. And then say, all right, so in my room, in my situation, in this non-optimal space where I can only do so much, this was the solution that sounded best to my ears. And that is a completely valid thing to say. And it doesn't mean that one subwoofer solution is better than the other. It just means that in my room at this time, this is what's working best for me.
Sure.
And I would still keep that SVS for if your situation ever changes, because it is going to be providing you with bass that those other two subs just can't do.
Yeah,
go ahead, Rob. I'm going to go get some drink.
Okay, yeah, this is a case of one of my favorite words, misattribution, right? Thinking that the difference that I'm hearing is due to the equipment inherently or the equipment alone, rather than the combination, the multiple variables of, particularly when we're talking subwoofers and low bass, it's like, that the location of where it is, and then a multitude of other things. Because have you applied any EQ? Have you altered the crossover frequencies? All of these things have the seating location. Have you listened to this in more than one seating location? Is this only in the primary seat that you notice this difference? How do things sound when you go to, there are other seats in this room. We can see them in the image there. What happens when you go to one of those other seating locations? So this is a case of multiple variables are available to be altered if what you're trying to do is get a sense of the equipment. Is this SVS subwoofer up to the task of replacing your pair of physically smaller and differently shaped and differently positioned B and W subwoofers? Well, then what you honestly need to do is find the location, and this isn't necessarily where the subwoofer itself is going to live for the long term, but find the location and the combination of settings in terms of EQ and crossover and perhaps even phase adjustment and things like that. Find the location where, when you're playing a bass sweep on repeat over and over and over, and this is one where I'd actually be playing it through the speakers and the subwoofers in combination, where the single SVS sub, at least in the primary seating location, because this is probably almost certainly not going to be true for all seating locations, but at least for the primary seating location, sounds the most similar to the response that you're getting from your pair of A and W. I'm thinking food here. B and W subwoofers where they are now, because we're not even trying to get the SVS sub at this point to produce a linear sweep. We're trying to get one that reproduces the sweep, whatever that might be, of the pair of B and W subwoofers that you're already used to. Then you'd be more close, you'd be a closer situation to evaluating the subwoofers that you had versus the new subwoofer. You've controlled for some of the other variables at that point. Then you're like, okay, this sub, the equipment is up to the task. Then it's a matter of, okay, now where does it need to be located? How does it need to be set up for the long term where I'm going to get the performance that I want? This isn't one where you can simplify down to the subwoofer itself is the thing to blame. There's too many other variables at play. So then he's asking, what about the idea of using all three subwoofers together with his SVS cylinder positioned somewhere towards the rear of the room while his pair of B&W subwoofers stay where they are? He's read some other people's thoughts on the internet, but what do we think about that idea? That is potentially viable. I wouldn't want to do it purely passively. I would want to do a fully active solution here because we have dissimilar subs. We have subwoofers at the front of the room that do not extend as low and do not play as loud as the now third subwoofer at the back of the room. For me, this is going to be a case of the multi-sub optimizer software being the solution here, which means you need something in between the subwoofer output of your AV receiver or pre-pro and the three subwoofer inputs that you're going to be working with, which basically means you need a mini DSP 2x4 HD. Those have gone up in price. Not surprisingly, everything has. It's $225 now to get one of those mini DSP 2x4 HD boxes. If you do not already have a UMic 1 measurement microphone, you can add that on for another $80, and they provide you with correction files directly from mini DSP these days. So that would be the connection box that I would purchase. And I would use the multi-sub optimizer software because that does a good job of measuring the individual responses of the three subwoofers individually, as well as the front, left, and right speakers, measuring what those capabilities are in situ, where they're positioned in the room, and then using its quite sophisticated processing to come up with the best combination of equalization that's applied by the mini DSP 2x4 HD on an individual basis to like 4 separate bass producing things, because front, left, and right speakers, plus each of the B&W subwoofers individually, plus the SVS sub at the back of the room, and it will use the total calculated output of all 4 of those things to produce the most uniform linear response that it can, and that would be the way that I would attack that. We can move on to Jefferson.
Good. Yes. So I didn't tell you, but right before the podcast started, I had almost like a planes, trains, and automobiles moment where I kept trying to do multiple things at the same time. And, and as soon as I switched off of one, I forgot the other, and things just started going haywire in my house. So when I left, I was like, I'm going to go get some coffee. Oh, right. You made a humongous mess in the kitchen. And you need to fix this. So only so much my OCD will let me. I don't have OCD, but you know what I mean. Only so much I had to go clean up a little bit. Jefferson, a few weeks ago, or episodes ago, just weeks, Jefferson wrote us about his den that he uses as his darkened home theater space. He was looking to replace his pre-pro with amps with an 11-channel AV receiver, preferably with XLR outputs for the subs, although that would take a back seat to the price. And we also covered a few other topics, such as replacement for his 4 SVS SB13 Ultra subwoofers, adding to his acoustic treatments and updating his over-the-air TV tuner pictures to help us remember. Nope.
It's not ringing a bell for Tom. I thought you would remember this one. The curtain over the opening to the den.
I remember the question, but those pictures don't help. I don't remember
the acoustic treatments on the back wall that you liked very much, because those are historic theaters in I think it was New Orleans, where he says he is. Yeah.
Oh,
very nice.
What those are?
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, firstly, he says thank you, and he appreciated all of our advice. And now, a few weeks later, he has made some purchases, and he's back with some more questions. The biggest purchase he made was getting the Onkyo it's TXRZ70 receiver. While it doesn't have the XLR subwoofer outputs of its Integra counterpart, he simply couldn't ignore the price. So he can make do with its RCA subwoofer outputs instead, since it otherwise gives him all the features he was looking for. Naturally, there are oodles and oodles of settings, and he's heard that Onkyo receivers include some hidden settings that don't show up in the normal setup menu. So can we tell him about any specific settings that he needs to find and look out for to make sure he's getting optimal performance from his plethora of connected devices? One thing to note is that he does watch 3D Blu-rays, and he still has an HD DVD player connected. So, yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, thankfully, Gene over at Audioholics, he actually does a nice detailed video specifically about the RZ70. So it is exactly model specific. It's not even just generalized to Onkyo. There are some hidden settings menus that you can access with a combination of button presses on the front panel, but thankfully that isn't necessary for you to do things that way anymore. There is a web interface that you can access, and like I say, Gene over at Audioholics put a whole video up about it that gives you access to anything that you might find in the quote-unquote secret menus that you can only access with the combination of button presses. They're all in the web interface. Now, that is not detailed in the manual, the web interface, but all you have to do is, first of all, have your RZ70 connected to your network. And then in the basic user settings, just go to the network settings and look up your IP address that has been assigned to your RZ70 AV receiver. You just type in that IP address to any web browser on your computer, and that gives you the login. Now, the username and password to log into the web interface is CI user. So like custom integration user. That's the username and password. They don't detail that in the manual, but that will let you into the web interface for the RZ70. In there, they actually have a tab at the top that can do HDMI diagnostics, which is kind of fun. So you can see what bandwidth the connected cables are able to pass through. You actually make a loop between the input that's closest to the monitor out and then the monitor out. You make a loop with whatever HDMI cable you're using, both ends plugged into the same AV receiver, one into the input, one into the monitor out, and then you can test the bandwidth. So that's kind of a fun thing. But then the main thing you're going to be concerned about with these 3D concerns or HD DVD player concerns is something that is only in the hidden menus. This isn't part of the regular user menus, but it's in this custom integrator web interface, is the HDMI signal format. For your 3D Blu-ray player, if you run into any issues, you'll want to bump that down to standard instead of enhanced, because 3D Blu-rays are the thing that sometimes run into problems when you have the HDMI port set to enhanced instead of standard. The RZ70 actually gives you 3 settings: standard, enhanced, or 8K enhanced, which is the full 40 gigabits of bandwidth that can do 4K 120 or 8K 60. So for all of your sources, you won't need to go beyond 4K enhanced, but if you're 3D Blu-rays or your HD DVD is going to give you any problems, this is thankfully input by input. It is individual. It's not like a general global setting for all HDMI ports. You can do this one at a time. You might need to set those players down to standard if they give you any problems, and that would be a hidden thing. You can't do in the normal menu. Also, you might not need to change the standard versus enhanced, but you can sometimes, like with the HD DVD, it might need you to manually set the HDCP copy protection to an earlier version, because by default, all the HDMI ports are set to the latest HDCP 2.3 version, and something like an HD DVD player might not recognize that new version and might need to be set back to HDCP 1.4, and in this web interface, you have that option to change the HDCP version on an input-by-input basis. So those are the settings that you would need to keep an eye out for.
All right. Scroll. His new Onkyo came with DRAC Live Full, but he's decided to pay the extra fee to add on DRAC Live bass controller. He already owns a UMIC 1 with a calibration file. So what does he need to look out for when running DRAC, and especially DRAC Live bass control? What's going on? What's going to be the best way to connect his 4 SB13 Ultra subs to the 2 independent subwoofer output jacks of the RZ70, and how does he make sure he ends up with the best possible results? This is not a dedicated room, which is a problem. It
does have an open side. The right side is open. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know how you do that without because are they independent subwoofer outputs, or is it mono on this thing?
It is 2 independent subwoofer outputs on the RZ70. Okay. That's an upgrade over the RZ50 that it replaced, is that it is 2 independent, but it's not 4 independent. It is 2 independent.
Right, which is what you would need.
Yeah, and the DRAC Live bass control is actually working on very similar principles as that multi-sub optimizer that I talked about in the previous question in this episode here. So this, to me, is going to require a little bit of trial and error if you're really trying to go for optimal results. Because since you have these fixed positions for 2 of your subs, which is just to the left and the right of your seats, and those are not going to move, and then you've got your other 2 subs, not quite the middle of the front wall, and then basically the middle of the back wall, but that is the theater area. That is not the total space, because you have this opening on the right side. So this is not going to be one where we can like mathematically predict that it's going to work perfectly. You might end up with the best results actually just only using one of the subwoofer outputs and feeding a mono signal to all 4 subs, and actually relying on manually configuring your 4 subs beforehand to give you as close to uniform response across the seats that you care about. Now, he's mentioned before, he really only cares about 1 seat in here. The other seats get what they get. So as long as you can get reasonable response manually with all 4 getting a mono signal, the DRAC Live bass control is still useful because it is working on the integration between the speakers and the subwoofers. It's doing a little bit more sophistication in the crossover than regular rim correction does, but it becomes a little more questionable. The standard answer would be normally what you would do is have the front and back subs together on output 1 and the 2 side subs together on output 2. That would be the normal, and that's probably how how I would start. I would maybe give that a try. But if you do notice any wonkiness, if you got the time to put into this, if you do notice any wonkiness with that configuration, it might be worth doing the mono output, same signal going to all 4 subs, but that would require you manually tuning them before running Dirac Live Bass Control. The other thing to look out for with Dirac is the initial level matching between everything, because unfortunately it does not ensure that even though it will level match all of your speakers and subs, it does not ensure in its process that they have all been level matched so that 0 on the master volume equals reference volume, reference cinema volume. It doesn't guarantee that. So what you kind of need to do is, and again, this can be some playing back and forth in things, but you basically need, on whatever speaker you start with, you got to leave enough headroom that you can move the whole system up and down a little bit after that. So my warning is, when you're doing that initial level matching between all the speakers, give yourself a little bit more headroom than you might think is totally necessary, because that will allow you to actually, boost the trim level on a speaker that needs it. And then if you need to raise the entire system volume, so that reference volume is where you want it to be, you've got enough headroom to do that. So that's my warning with Dirac.
All right. His JVC RS1100, the same as the MP5 projector, offers its own JVC calibration software. JVC instructions say it says it only supports a couple of different meters. So he bought a Spider X Pro to allow him to do JVC's automated color and gamut calibration. Do we have any advice about going through that software and the process it uses? And should he be making use of the 10 different picture setting profiles, or does he really need to only calibrate a single time? So why would you need more than one calibration setting? Would be for different lighting conditions.
Yep.
And that, I guess, is just more a question for you. Do you want to calibrate it for, when some of these, because he's got, screens or curtains to black this area out. Mm-hmm. Do you really only care about it being perfectly calibrated for when you care about it? Meaning when you've closed all the stuff and blocked as much light as you're going to block, in which case, calibrate it. You can do one for, I blocked everything off and it's full daylight outside, and there's still a little bit of light leaking in. That's one calibration. Mm-hmm. And the second calibration for, I've blocked everything off. It's nighttime and there's no light leaking in, and do a second calibration. Those would be the 2 calibrations I would do, but I would probably only actually do the one calibration and just not care.
Yeah, thankfully, JVC themselves, they posted a tutorial going through this software with actually the very same meter that you're using. So no difference even there for this series of projectors that you're using. So it's the exact right video for you to watch. There's a couple of things, though, that I just wanted to point out, because if you just follow it exactly one for one, there's a couple of things that they tried to make this video a reasonable length, so that they didn't mention. So the main thing that I want to warn you about is that in their process, they are taking a reflected measurement off of the screen itself. Now, that is for the benefit of if your screen has a little bit of a color tint to it or something like that. This is calibrating the whole thing. This isn't calibrating just the light that's coming straight out of the projector. This is calibrating the combination of the projector and the screen. But the downside of doing that is that it is remarkable how little stray light from something else can skew the results. People don't think that, okay, I'm sitting in this room and my laptop screen is open, but the laptop screen isn't facing the projector screen. No. Like that light is going to make it onto the screen. It's going to make it into the meter, and it can skew the results. You can get a different result from, I've been very careful that, the laptop light isn't getting anywhere, but I'm still in the room. And when I ran the calibration on day 1, I was wearing a black shirt. And when I was running the calibration on day 2, I was wearing a white shirt. And it's like, well, I'm not in the light path. That's enough to make a difference. It is when you're doing a reflected reading, it's tough. If you've got any LED status lights on something, like you got to be really careful here that, if you're getting persnickety about it. Yeah, it can make a significant difference in the reading. So that's why, like, sometimes you'll see on forums people saying, like, I'm getting these wildly different results from the JVC software. It's like, have you controlled for all the variables for all the other tiny sources of light and reflected light that could be in here? Like, I bet you haven't, and that can be the reason for it. The other thing is they're showing an acceptable method of pointing this sensor at the screen, which is that it's supposed to be at like a 45-degree off angle because you don't want the shadow of the meter itself reading on the screen. But I would recommend, if you've got a ceiling mounted projector, which we know he has an elevated mount for his projector, put the sensor of this centered on the screen but low down so that the 45-degree angle you're creating is the vertical 45-degree angle rather than having it off to the side. That is going to be closer to the light path that the projected light actually takes from the projector to your eyes, and that's what matters more rather than the side glancing 45-degree angle. So that's just a small difference there. The trickiest part that they do detail in the video is just like getting the initial network connections all set up, because it is not intuitive. It is not user-friendly. I would actually maybe recommend doing this hardwired, just getting a little Ethernet switch and plugging the projector directly into the Ethernet switch and plugging your computer directly into that same Ethernet switch, and doing away with the IP address, stuff that you have to do if you're doing it over your wireless connection, because it's not user friendly, that part of the setup. And then, as to making use of perhaps those 10 different user presets, you can do a separate setting for HDR versus SDR. You don't have to, because it will automatically calculate your HDR settings, but what a lot of people like to do is use a lower lamp mode for SDR versus a high lamp mode for HDR, and you're going to want to do two separate calibrations for that if that's the case, if you've changed the lamp mode.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing is you might want different gamma settings, because it might just be, okay, I don't want to like redo the entire calibration, but sometimes I've got a little more light during the day and maybe I want a 2.2 gamma instead of a 2.4 gamma. That might be worth running through the automated process and then setting that as, user 3 is when I've got the 2.2 gamma instead of the 2.4. So that would be where I would use those things.
Okay. Excuse me. He bought the basic ADTH next-gen TV tuner box that Rob suggested, and then he's also got his Oppo 203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, Sony X700 Ultra HD Blu-ray player that can play all regions, Toshiba HD DVD player, Apple TV 4K, Retro Tink, I hate that name, 4K Pro for his retro gaming consoles, and his Project debut Carbon turntable. Anything specific in any of their settings that he needs to make sure he's adjusted in order to get the best performance.
So, the video side of things hasn't changed. And that would be where it's really the audio side. And there isn't. Anything you were doing with your old setup on the audio side, you don't need to change anything there. I might just suggest on the Apple TV 4K, since the JVC projector that you have takes a while to do those HDMI handshakes, that you might, on that one, instead of having it match the frame rate and match the dynamic range so that it's always changing depending on the content, you just pick one and go with that. That might be the simplest thing, that you don't have those long black interstitials whenever the content changes, because your MP5, it's up to the task of taking a 60 hertz signal but detecting that it was originally 24 and doing that inverse telecine. It can do that, and that might be about the only change.
Okay. Mohsen in Australia. Mohsen is back. He's made some changes and upgrades to his theater. Using his Tone Winner Pre-Pro and 11-channel amp, plus a Fosse ZA3, he has expanded to a 13-speaker setup with a new pair of Klipsch bookshelf speakers so that he has Klipsch reference Premier speakers for his surrounds and surround backs now. And then he put a pair of Yamaha NS160 towers into use as front wide speakers powered by that 2-channel Fosse amp. He also got himself a new pair of theater recliners with motorized headrests that can fold down to give an unobstructed view from all of the speakers to his ears. And his existing couch and love seat have been rearranged to give him more seating now. So he's moved stuff around.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. So with those upgrades complete, he is turning his attention to his display. His current ultra short throw projector setup uses a WeMax A300 4K ultra short throw projector with its matching floor rising tensioned UST screen. The screen has a serrated texture to reject overhead and ambient light. His budget is 5,000 Australian, which is just under 5 Xboxes.
That's right.
But he's really not sure what path to take. He could switch to a 98-inch LCD with full array local dimming, and since it's clearance season on last year's models, he might be able to score a 2024 flagship TV model within his budget. But he's having a hard time with the mental block of shrinking down from a 120-inch image to a measly 98 inches.
I mean, like, to be fair, in terms of screen area, that is like a 30% difference in terms of like
big.
Square inches. So it's not nothing. That's a definitely noticeable difference.
He isn't particularly keen on switching over to a standard throw projector. There's additional cost beyond the projector itself if he does that, since it would require a ceiling mount, a new long HDMI cable, which is not a nominal fee.
Yeah, it's not insignificant.
Plus the hassle of its installation. And he'd also need to change his projection screen. His budget would already preclude him from getting even the least expensive JVC or Sony 4K model. So all in all, he doesn't really think a standard throw projector is the right solution for him. So that leaves the option of upgrading to a different ultra short throw model, but within his budget. Is there anything out there that would really be worth it over what he has right now? He's hoping we can talk him through the situation and give our opinions on what he should do. So again, we've talked earlier in this podcast about screen size and how for most people it makes sense to go with a flat panel. This is one of those situations where maybe it doesn't. So he's already got a projection set up. His seats are already kind of where they're going to be.
Yeah.
He's got some very close seats there, the ones with the headrests that bend back or whatever, the green ones. But they're clearly in a position where the screen size is right for them. So if you were to switch to a flat panel display, the flat panel, I mean, going from 120 to 98, let's just say 120 to 100.
Yeah.
It's more than you think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
You're like, oh, it's only 20 inches. No, it makes the surface area
20 inches diagonally.
Yeah.
20 inches diagonally is a lot more than even just 20 inches wider. Yeah, it's it is considerable. So, I mean, like, technically speaking, you mount the screen or put it on a stand so that it is a foot closer to you than the projection screen. Doable. Maybe a little bit more hassle than you might be imagining, but doable.
Well, look at where your center speaker is right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Could it? I mean, measure that. That's the first thing I would do is measure that. Like, if you were to mount a flat panel directly above, like, could it be in line with that or very close?
Yeah, that's going to be like a foot
that?
and a half closer at that point.
Yeah,
that's a fairly good depth on that center speaker. But yeah, if you're thinking, okay, I can get a wall mount and get it 1 foot closer quite easily. All the seats move forward 1 foot. You know, that's a 2 foot closer in total, eyes to screen. And technically speaking, that retains very close to the same field of view as you have with your current distances and the 120-inch screen size. But like, it does still feel different. It does still require moving your seat somewhat. Like, I understand where you're coming from. It's not as simple as, I'm just going to switch to the 98 flat panel. Like, if you went to a 115-inch flat panel, then I'd be like, yeah, let's do that. But the cost is not reasonable with a 5,000 Australian dollar budget. You're not able to get a 115-inch yet. You can definitely get a TCL C755. That is a 2024 model. The 98-inch within your budget for sure. The C855 probably not going to get for 5,000 Australian dollars. And then for the brand new C7K, C8K, they are at the moment above your $5,000 budget, but the C755 can certainly be had. So if you can convince yourself of, I'm going to move the screen a bit closer, I'm maybe going to nudge my seats a bit closer, I can do that. The field of view is what matters to me, not the actual physical distance from eyes to screen. Then that can be an option. But if you're looking for an ultra short throw that can replace what you have, pretty much drop-in replacement, but give you a noticeable picture quality upgrade, there is a brand new ultra short throw that is within your price range. It's from the company Nexigo. And they had their original one, which was the Nexigo Aurora, which was reviewed fairly well, but had a few, shortcomings on it. It was kind of their first go at ultra short throw. They seem to have really taken on board all of those criticisms, and with the Nexigo Aurora Pro Mark II, according to the early reviews, including from a couple of reviewers that I really do trust to do a good job on these reviews, they're like, yeah, they really tackled all the shortcomings that were talked about. What this has that your current ultra short throw projector does not have is quite a good laser dimming system. This is an RGB tandem laser system. So it's not a pure RGB laser light engine. It does have a phosphor element in there, which is actually kind of beneficial. It actually gives you a wider spectrum of light to work with so that you don't get the color shifting that some people's eyes are. Because when you have the red, green, blue lasers, those are such precise color points that it can really bring in color shifting to some people's eyes. Having that phosphor in there actually helps even that out a lot. But in addition to that, they've added a dynamic iris. So the combination of the laser dimming with the dynamic iris, it's still using a DLP system as the actual thing that's changing the on and off state of the light, same as your Wemex that you have now, but it is dramatically noticeable, the perceived contrast, right? If we're actually talking moment-to-moment contrast, it's still the contrast range of the DLP chip itself, and that hasn't actually changed. But perceptually, it makes a big difference. When there's a fade to a lower overall light scene versus a much, much brighter scene, it has a way wider range of on-off contrast than the one that you have right now. It is very noticeable. Also, by all the reviews, they did a really good job implementing Dolby Vision on the Aurora Pro Mark II. Like, better than anybody else's implementation of Dolby Vision on a projector. So those things are visibly noticeable. You will not mistake the projector you have now for the Nexigo Aurora Pro Mark II. In terms of like strict accuracy, right? In like all color points and all gamma and everything, it's like, okay, it doesn't have that. But I would probably take the perceived large contrast boost, the perceived much deeper black levels. I will take that in this type of case over like absolute strict I mean, you can set it to be strictly accurate, then you just have to turn off all of those wonderful dynamic features, and now it looks the same as your Wemex. So that wouldn't be worth it. But that is an option that's out there in your price range that you would notice visually. You would notice the difference for sure. So if I were going to get anything, that would be it.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough with the ultra short throws. You're kind of limited. I just don't know what the longevity of those projectors are as far as
like 20,000 hours.
Like the projectors themselves. I'm talking about the ultra short throws as a category of projectors. I really think that they're a good solution. I think that they are the future for everybody that has a rear projection setup and in the future wants to move forward. I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to see a more affordable projector, rear projector, not rear, but back of the room projector, front projector setups that we've had for a long time. Because even now, the JVCs and Epson's like the only reasonable game in town. I don't know. I think that ultra short throw makes the most sense, but they still have to sell it to people. So just because I think it makes sense doesn't mean that anybody else, the common people would agree with me. Henry's deciding whether to pull the trigger on the Kaleidescape purchase. The $2,000 price point of the new Strato M standalone player really got him intrigued, and we said that his JVC NP5 projector is up to the task of upscaling the 1080p with HDR output to 4K with HDR in this 120-inch screen, so that got him pretty close to making the purchase. But then he spoke, oh God. The rep from Kaleidescape, and while they didn't outright say he should pay $2,000 more and get the Strato V player instead, they kind of indicated that with his MP5 projector, he would be better off with the Strato V rather than the Strato M. But that $4,000 price tag gave him pause, so much so that he kind of tumbled backwards into questioning whether or not he needs a Kaleidescape at all. He already has an Apple TV 4K and the Panasonic the Panasonic Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Where did that UB come from? Just right out of my brain. So, for any movies he wants to own in top quality, he can buy those on disc. And then the Apple TV 4K provides the convenience side of things. Is Kaleidescape honestly going to be that much better on either front? And then, if he does get a Kaleidescape player, does he need to go whole hog and get the $4,000 Strato V player so that he has the 4K output? Honestly, man, I don't understand where. So I want to be honest. Okay.
That is 100 movies. For the $2,000 difference, you can get 100 movies. Not to mention that if you already own a bunch of discs and you want to get the Kaleidescape versions, they have their disc to digital program, which charges you extra, but nowhere near the full cost. It's like $7-8 if you do the disc to digital. So you could end up with like 200 movies quite easily for that $2,000 difference. I don't think that Kaleidescape rep did themselves any favors. That is almost ridiculous that they said that, and I disagree. I disagree with what was insinuated.
So if you come into my bike shop that I work at part-time, mostly to pay for my biking habit, I try desperately not to sell you a bike. And the reason is because bikes, people just don't want to shop for bikes. They don't. They're not interested in it. They want to be sold a bike. They want you to tell them this is the perfect bike for you. And they buy it and then they leave, and people buy bikes once or twice in their lives, maybe, depending on how often they leave them in their front yard to get stolen or forgot to close the garage door. So, there's no, for the seller, there's no downside to pushing a bike on somebody, even though it doesn't fit, even though it's not the right bike for them, even though they're going to end up hating it and never riding it. Even if they love it, they're never going to ride it anyway. So there's no downside. But I don't think that that's the right thing to do. I think that people should buy the right bike for them, give themselves the best chance for liking the experience of riding the bike. So I try not to sell you bikes. I'm not interested in selling you bikes. I'm interested in fixing bikes. Don't care. But I'm also not a Kaleidescape dealer, and I feel like if I was a Kaleidescape dealer, I would want you to buy my stuff. And it's very strange to me.
If nothing else, yeah.
That it's very strange to me that the idea that it's more important for me to upsell you than it is for me to sell you a thing that you came in here to buy it.
Yeah.
He was ready to put money on the table.
The fair enough side is that, they don't make any profit on that Strato M, and they make some profit on the Strato V, so that might be,
maybe that's what he's thinking.
Big part of it. Yep.
Yeah, that may be what he's thinking. But from your standpoint, I can make the argument that you don't need a Kaleidescape. I can make that argument.
You can make that argument.
But I already made that argument, and you were like, well, I still kind of want one. Then you should get it. As far as how much difference the quality is going to be from getting the V with the 4K, 4K transfers of these movies versus the M with the 2K or whatever we're calling 1080p transfers that are upscaled. The HDR makes the difference, my man.
Yep.
The HDR makes the difference. I don't care what any of these idiots say.
It's like I said, I'm sure you've watched a Blu-ray, like a Blu-ray, not an Ultra HD Blu-ray. I'm sure you've watched a Blu-ray on your NP5, and were you thinking to yourself, this looks really fuzzy and out of focus? Like, absolutely not. It looked sharp. That wasn't a problem. It's not the resolution. So here's my argument for why you should get a Kaleidescape and get the Strato M, not the Strato V. The 100 movies, maybe 200 movies, if you do this to digital, that's all you need to convince yourself on that end. Do you like to have access to movies earlier than any other system? And that could include rentals, right? If you like to have access certainly earlier than when the physical discs come out, that's an argument for Kaleidescape. The movies are available before any other home service. And then the audio quality. If audio is top priority for you, it is better quality than what's coming from Apple TV 4K. It's not better quality on the audio side than what you're going to find on a disc. Like, not on a technical level. There can still be mastering differences. But on a technical level, the discs can deliver you lossless audio quality, and so can Kaleidescape. But versus Apple TV 4K, there is an audio quality difference there. It's objectively there, and that Apple TV 4K is lossy. But yeah, just experiential-wise, like there can be a difference there, an actual noticeable, genuine difference there. So if audio quality is a top priority and you want to have access to the movies earlier, to me, that is solid reasons to get a Kaleidescape. And if that's convincing to you, go get a Strato M. I think you'll be really happy.
Yeah, I think it's very silly. I think it's very silly to not buy one. Now, I know Rob wants to go late because we haven't gotten very many questions.
I know the next two questions are quite long. I think we can hit 8 and 9 quickly because those are short questions. So if you've got to go...
We got to, because I've got to get a son from school. I still have a bunch of stuff to do, and I messed up my kitchen.
Yeah.
Bob in the Philippines. Bob has had his LG E Series OLED TV for a little over 8 years now. He's starting to wonder about its life expectancy. Back when he had a plasma TV, it got to the point where he could tell visually that it was starting to deteriorate. The color started to look a bit washed out, and the deep black levels started to look gray. Should he expect a similar experience with an OLED, or will it begin to fail in a different way, or does it just go from works fine to doesn't work at all at once one day? I assume it's fading. Isn't it going to fade? I think
it gets dimmer. Yeah, the OLEDs, they do dim over time. It's tough to see because it happens really gradually, like really gradually. And then it's running its compensation cycles in between so that you're not noticing like splotchiness or unevenness in the image. Like the blue part of the OLED ages faster, dims faster than the red and green parts of the OLED. So they artificially lower the light output of the red and green along with the natural dimming of the blue to keep it all even. That's what that compensation cycle is about. They're actually adjusting the voltages on a sub-pixel by sub-pixel basis with that process to keep the image looking nice and even. But it's a 20,000 hour lifespan to the half brightness of when it was peak at the brand new. And it actually, like every other type of display, loses a greater percentage of brightness like within the first 100 hours. And then, so like from the first 100 hours, the absolute peak is going to come down like 10-15%. And then it's a really gradual dimming for the next 20,000 hours to the half brightness from that original peak. And that's really tough to notice because you already lost like that initial 10-15% really early on. So it's even less noticeable. So this is not an all or nothing by any means. It's not going to have like fading colors, fading contrast. The contrast is going to stay inky black. It's the peak white that's going to gradually get a little bit dimmer over time. So I think by the time this TV is ready to give up the ghost, unless you use it 18 hours a day, by the time it's actually, you're going to be ready to replace it anyway. This isn't one where I'm fearing that, it's going to like pop on me one day. That's not going to happen.
Okay. That's what I figured. Jack's son recently got an aftermarket sound system for his car. Jack said he could do the installation, but then realized it's been 20 years since he's installed a car stereo, and it seems he's kind of forgotten a thing or two. Most of it kind of came back to him, but they got a bit hung up on one setting. It's got a loudness setting. He remembers car stereos having that setting as far back as the 80s, but if he's being honest, he never actually knew what it does on a technical level. You just sort of flick it on versus off, have a listen, and decide whether you like it or not. So can we explain what the loudness setting actually does? Now, it's just an EQ. The older ones were just EQs. There's just that's all it is. It's just some sort of EQ that boosts certain frequencies that somebody determined were the ones that they should be boosting and all that. But I wonder if in this newer car, if it's actually something else, because there are I'll say volume modulators.
Yeah, volume dependent.
Yeah, so that as you increase your speed, and there's wind noise and that sort of stuff, car noise, that the volume level overall of the music goes up to compensate for how you're hearing it. That happens in all the cars that we have now, except for the older truck, which I think is like a 2013. They have this compensation that happens as you speed up, and the engine noise and the cabin noise increases. It increases like and it's like a low, medium, high, or off or something like that for how much it increases that volume. So I wonder, or changes that volume, because it does go back down when you slow down. So I wonder if that's what that is.
I mean, usually what you're talking about there, where it's like dependent on the speed of the vehicle, it's pretty hard to do that in the aftermarket systems. So like the original loudness settings, if you're going back to the 80s and 90s when you would find this loudness setting on amplifiers, integrated amplifiers had it too back then, not just car systems. That was like a really early attempt at what something like Odyssey Dynamic EQ does today. It was not exactly the Fletcher-Munson curves, but it was like people noticed how when you turn the master volume dial down, the bass would disappear first. Like people noticed that all along, and that's all because of our threshold of perceptible hearing and the non-linear nature of our hearing, where we're not as attuned to bass as we are to the mid-range vocal frequencies. So the loudness setting was rather crude, rather inaccurate, but still sometimes useful. Dynamic control, where when you turn the master volume down lower, it would boost the bass. And then when you cranked the master volume up really high, it would bring it back down. So it wasn't just the regular bass boost control, right? It wasn't just the standard bass and treble controls where if you raise it, it's raised 100% of the time. The loudness setting was a little bit dynamic in that when you turn the master volume down, it would boost up the bass a bit more. And often it would boost the treble a little bit too, because people liked hearing that, extra detail. But then when you crank the master volume back up, it would bring those EQs back down. So it was slightly dynamic, kind of like dynamic EQ. It was, like I say, kind of crude, not exactly accurate, but that was the idea behind it. So most likely, especially if it's more than just an on and off setting, if it's actually a low, middle, high type setting or fully variable in the new car system that you're installing, then it's going to be a similar thing. It's going to be a dynamic based on the master volume setting. The lower you turn it, the more bass boost it applies, probably some treble boost too. So on a technical level, that's what it was doing.
All right.
Yeah, so we got Ryan, and that's a lot of questions from Ryan, so I'm scrolling down to find Tony was the other name on the list. So Ryan and Tony, you'll be first up next week.
All right, I want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Jefferson for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 131 patrons over at patreon.com.
For sure, Jefferson, thank you for that PayPal donation. And patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 131 patrons over there.
We want to thank Vince for offering to help Rob out with his Switch pre-order, and John and Karl for talking to us about the third-party or first-party software that we're using to do these video calls.
That is right. Vince, John, Karl, thank you all very much for trying to help us out.
We also got notes of gratitude from Jefferson, Henry, Ryan, Vince, and Jack. Thank you very much for thanking us.
Yeah, and I'll say the names one more time. We got Jefferson, Henry, Ryan, Vince, and Jack. Thank you all very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We very much appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.